What's up, brother?
Welcome everyone back to another TDRS. You all know we are on a new day and a new time, so you can check us out on Fridays at 12 noon. And we are so excited about making sure that all of our viewers who are connected to the Black Wall Street Times in Atlanta can view this amazing conversation that the TDRS crew brings to you every week. Of course, as you all see, that we don't have our sister Tanisha. Self-care is important, and she is on vacation from working extremely hard with the Bright Bean family. And so, as she will return on next week with us, we definitely are sending her a lot of well wishes of rest, peace, and love at the moment. And so, we have an amazing show ahead. And so, again, please make sure you like and share this conversation out. I can hear Tanisha now telling us that, listen, make sure you tune in and you like this conversation, share it out with other people, tag some cousins, aunties, brother-in-law, sisters, mama, daddy, grandmamas, etc. to the conversation. And Brother Neo, it's good to see you. How's everything going on your end?
Bro, everything is going really, really well. I'm excited to have this conversation today and definitely excited to talk about the tea. This has been a really strange week in America. I mean, from the tornadoes, the hurricane, the flooding, the fires, the crazy laws passing. Like, this country is on fire in so many different ways.
Most definitely agree. I was doing a lot of review with my students on, understanding hurricanes and, how we name hurricanes, right? And just how we identify natural disasters. And shout out to my students. These are middle school students, y'all, and they are so brilliant. I think it's because they're listening to us Neo every week also with their parents. But the students asked me in class this week, Mr. Allen, did you realize that Katrina and Ida are like names that many Black women have?
What?
And I was like, you know what? You are absolutely right. And I think that that's a sign that we need to probably listen to women more in conversations around equity in economics and education. And so I have to give a shout out to my students who are doing the things that I'm helping them to learn, which is pick up on context clues and critically think about other things that connect. And so we are sending our prayers and well wishes out to all of those in Louisiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, those who are in California. The wildfires are still happening. That's still a thing. And it just really calls us attention to what's happening around us and how we connect with our neighbors and people in our nation. And so definitely sending well wishes to them.
Definitely.
So I think we are ready as we are 13 minutes into the hour. I think it's time for the TDRST.
All right. So what's the tea, bro? What's the tea?
Man, listen, the first story really touches home to me. Elijah McClain was, of course, slain by police officers. And what I am saddened by is that his journey as an exceptional learner is not being elevated. And so I do want to take a moment to press upon us the importance of making sure that our police forces, our paramedics are really trained the same way that our nurses, our counselors, our teachers are trained in crisis management and reaching those learners who learn differently. Elijah McClain, of course, is an exceptional learner with his autism, and a lot of people fail to realize that he was simply doing what a lot of times educators have taught him to do. He had on his earphones, he was walking down the street, he was in his comfort zone, he was in his neighborhood. And, unfortunately, the police officers failed him because they were doing what they do best, which is racially profiling.
Right.
Too many of our citizens who just happen to be Black and brown. And then the paramedics did not even look accurately to see, oh, wow, does this kid have asthma? Is he on medication? Is he, someone who has a severe health condition? And this is something important to me because we have too many students in our public schools, in our society, that have severe health conditions, and no one is prepared to serve them well. And so I wanted to highlight that part of this. But the T is that the police officers and the paramedics are going to have charges brought against them. And I feel like as activists and advocates, we should make sure we're doing our part to ensure that they are properly trained, because Elijah is not the only student who is an exceptional learner that has been harmed by people who just, quite frankly, aren't invested in making sure that I am adequately servicing or working with someone who has a disability. So I wanted to see your thoughts, brother, on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another step towards justice, but it isn't justice, right? Elijah McClain, he's not coming back. Just like Ahmaud Arbery isn't coming back. I don't know if you saw yesterday, the district attorney in the case was actually charged as well, or indicted for trying to protect the two men that killed Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And it's incredible. It just shows how systemic racism works. It shows how even the DA, which we pay taxes to, right, can be biased in protecting a murderer, a person, two people that literally lynched this kid in broad daylight, hunted him down. He was unarmed, can be a part of the system and let justice be denied for, the 70 or 80 days that these two men were running loose in the streets. It's really sad. It's unfortunate. And then really sad when we talk about critical race theory. I'm like, that's how it works, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And so it's exciting, to see that in some way the family is seeing some justice, but unfortunately, they're not going to be able to bring their loved one back as he has transitioned on to the next realm.
Right.
And, we have to take life, not for granted. We have to value it more, and all lives, Black lives, brown lives, women, LGBTQ. We have to be mindful of how we are engaging our citizens, and every citizen has the right to walk down the street with their headphones on and listening to their music and being able to be at peace. And so rest in peace to Elijah. My heart goes out to his family. And I'm just thinking about all of the exceptional learners and those who have disabilities who are even at more fear and have more anxiety around being in society that doesn't acknowledge them. And quite frankly, as we've seen with Elijah, does not protect them. And so as we are on these hot topics and what is happening, of course, with CRT, which is critical race theory.
Yeah.
Neo, you already know there has been a huge issue with CRT across the nation. And so many people are uneducated around what's happening. And Neo, here's the reality. Our public schools do not have multicultural curriculum. And I'm excited about our guests who will be on shortly, who are in spaces in education that are helping to change the dynamics of our young people. And so we're taking you guys to some tea out of Florida.
Yeah.
With parents who, in front of children, in front of teachers, in front of neighbors and professionals,
on television with the camera recording, the phones recording,
fighting, fist fighting, like throwing things in harm's way. I don't even think this clip accurately, because I don't even want people to think it's funny, but it was the amazement of the children. Like, this generation, a lot of people will say, they're into the fights and they're into seeing. I think the kids were in shock that their parents were throwing chairs and fighting over critical race theory because their parents don't want them to be exposed to a lot of truths and a lot of realities around our country and race. And so go ahead, man.
Bro, so is it a coincidence that like the anti-critical race theory people are like the anti-mask people? Like, is there a connection there at all? What do you think?
It is a connection, because here's the reality. Education is key. It's all about how we communicate our message and how we educate our constituents. And they are under the belief that this is an attack against our freedom. This is an attack against our beliefs. This is an attack against our way of living. And so it really brings into question, I'm not about segregation, but I do feel as if, if there are parents who want to send their children to a program where masks are not required and we're not doing the vaccine and we're not encouraging, students to wash their hands and cover their mouths when they cough or when they sneeze, then if they want to all get together and be educated in this, I'm for that. I'm like, hey, if you all want that, then just do your thing. But that your thing should not be the thing for everyone. And I know we don't condone violence, so we may not get into the clip, but we're just showing you all that this is something that is very real, that is happening regarding parents across the nation who are fighting.
So we are
around critical race theory. I'm gonna leave that in the studio. And if they decide to show it, then I'm all good. But you guys do see the article on the screen. You can definitely check out Independent. But again, this does really reflect the arguments that have intensified to actually physical altercation and fights with our parents. And we definitely wanted to highlight that within the tea. So if we can show the clip, we're good. If not, again, we don't condone violence, especially when it's not really going towards protecting children. I mean, these are adults fighting because they're upset with each other, not fighting because children's lives are actually in danger. And I'm trying to protect, a child or someone who's in danger. So I think they're gearing up to play the clip. And then right after this, we're going to bring on our amazing guest for today.
Sounds good.
Are you shocked at what this has become?
Not at all. Been watching it on social media for weeks and months and months. I'm not.
Okay, right here. Look, right here. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, fists are now flying. All of this on live television. Fists are flying.
No, she doesn't have a mask.
Unbelievable what we are seeing here today unfold live. Now we can see the sheriff's deputies are coming out here to get between the two groups. A lot of confusion, a lot of anger, as a lot of deputies now are finally pouring in to see exactly what happened. And again, I was live and I saw somebody push one of the people that was supporting the mask mandate. And again, now we have deputies here trying to get this under control. So Nate, to answer your question, yes, tempers are flying here today. And again, the only word I can use to describe this in my 32 years of broadcast covering is I am shocked at what is taking place here.
Bro, listen, so I am frozen when he kept saying all. Like he said all of everything except for all of the spit that was flying out of their mouths into someone's face. And let me tell you, having had to break up fights in schools before, it's a whole bunch of everything flying, and spit is one of them because people are yelling and screaming, and just the police officers and those public servants who are also put in harm's way because now they're trying to break apart people who are screaming in each other's faces. Spit is flying everywhere. I don't know if you brushed your teeth. I don't know your hygiene. I don't know if you've been exposed.
Some of it is like number one threat, right? But before we move on to the guest, man, did you hear about the teacher getting their mask snatched off their face by a parent? So a parent evidently walked in school, snatched a face mask off of the teacher's face. Isn't that a mess? What would you have done in that situation?
Well, first, I let me say this: if a parent felt bold enough to do that, then we would have already known that this was a problem. Because I drive family and community engagement standards, and I make it a point that the parents and families that I serve know that I respect them. This is what I don't tolerate from your child or your children because I want to make sure they're safe. And I certainly am not going to tolerate it from you. And so for it to even get to a point where a parent felt bold enough to want to step to me, then I would already be aware that we had some type of issue, and I wouldn't have even allowed myself to be in that space. But it's the level of disrespect that a parent would have against a teacher that is working with your child on a daily basis that, to be quite honest, because of increasing numbers of COVID-19 in a lot of our schools, are putting themselves at risk. And so I think that parents, teachers, administrators, adults have to be mindful of the actions that we display in front of our children, and then come right back around and say, now Generation Y and Generation Z, they are so hopeless because they're reckless and they're violent and they're all these things. But where did they learn these things? And so that's my whole caveat of response to that situation. I can't even imagine that happening, because I'm just like, parents, we definitely have to be on the same page in order to make sure that children are thriving. So that's what I have to say on that, my brother.
All right.
So we're ready to bring on our guest for today. And I know we're a little into the hour, so we're going to go ahead and bring on some returning guests to the show. And we also have a new guest on today as we talk about the importance of back to school from the perspective of teachers and educators. Shibby Brooks has been on before. This brother is amazing. I had an opportunity to actually teach in the same school district as him in Clayton County. And let me tell you, if Clayton County has two teachers like Shibby and I, then Clayton County must be doing something that's in the right direction, because every school system doesn't have amazing teachers like us. And also my brother, Centel Brown, who is an educator and also a school board member, is joining us. And Queen Sheba herself, the queen, I love this woman. She is a professor at CAU. I had an opportunity to meet with some of her students and herself recently, and it's doing amazing work. And so, Queen, we'll start with you first, as you are new to TDRS. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go to Centel, and then we're going to go to Shibby.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Queen Sheba, or you can call me A. That's what I'm going by on our ballot, because they were like, Queen Sheba is not a nickname. And I was like, yes, it is. That's what everybody knows me as. But I'm a professor at Clark Atlanta University, right around the corner from my home here in the West End. And I teach poetry, short stories, and freshman composition. I'm a Grammy-nominated poet as of 2021, this current year. So I'm very excited about that. I just started 20 years doing spoken word and art, and I created an online course called College of Dope Ass Writers, where I teach people how to start their own business and how to become published. And this fall course that I'm teaching artists how to become Grammy ready, because spoken word is not its own category in the Recording Academy. It's under books on tape. And so we rallied and went out for a change, and we said, hey, we want to have our own category, because the people that are winning under poetry aren't poets, they aren't spoken word artists. And so the Recording Academy had a roundtable via Zoom with all the important spoken word artists in the country, and we were able to affect change. And it was super huge. Yeah. So in 2022, for the very first time ever, Recording Academy and the Grammys will recognize spoken word as a performance art in their category. So I'm super excited about that.
Congratulations.
Super awesome. Love that.
Just a little bit about me. I have a lot going on.
Brother Brown, welcome back to TDRS. It is good to have you. Now, Tanisha sends her regrets, because we had an amazing show where you were on some months back. And so it's good to have you back on, brother. And just give us a little shout out for those who are tuning in maybe for the first time. Tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do.
Yes, I am Arsentel Brown, proudly serving the first of all, so I'm at work right now. I consult for the DA in Chatham County. So I am actually at work in her executive suite and having a good time. But Arsentel Brown, who proudly serves the first district on the Griffin-Spalding County Schools Board of Education. I am a small town country boy from Griffin, Georgia. I am a 8th grade social studies educator and an owner of a small political and educational consultancy. So It is always a pleasure to be on here to be able to talk that real shit and just enjoy being a guest on this platform. You guys are touching many, many people, and it's always a pleasure to be in the same space as Jason and Brother Brooks. And so I'm excited to learning more about Queen Sheba. Definitely, and anything that I can do to help, just let me know.
Awesome, brother, and welcome back to the platform. Everyone, please make sure you like and share this conversation, whether you're in Chatham, you're in Griffin Spalding, you're in the AUC, you're in Clayton County, you're in Tennessee, California. Our family from Philly, I know, is checking in as I'm looking at the comments. So wherever you are in the nation or globally, make sure you like and share this conversation. Brother Brooks. Brooks, go ahead, brother.
Well, thank you for having me, Jason, and always keeping me included in the conversation. My name is Alfred Shibby Brooks. I am an educator by day. I teach high school economics, government, and personal finance at Charles R. Drew High School in Clayton County. I'm a resident of Southeast Atlanta. I live in the Grant Park area. I am running for Atlanta City Council Post 1 at large. And as a grassroots community organizer, this would be one of the first times in the Post 1 seat that we would have someone grassroots level really raising their hand to give voice to young people and to change in Atlanta City politics in a very long time. But yeah, so I'm just excited to be here and to this talk with you. And definitely want to shout out my sister Queen Sheba, because for those that know, way back in the Free and AJ era of 106 in Park, I was a Freestyle Friday Hall of Famer. And when I first came back to Atlanta, because I lived here as a child, came back to Atlanta in 2004, Sheba used to host a open mic at a little hole in the wall spot called Django's on Peachtree, right next to the Shakespeare Tavern and the old Gladys Knights. And Sheba, really gave me space to express my art and to get my voice out. And she and I have maintained a relationship over a long time. And seeing her raise her hand to represent our voices and our needs in the education space is huge. So I'm just excited to see the things that she's doing, and just like, look what our culture is doing, y'all. Like, look at this, right? This is
Black people helping Black people.
Come on.
It's because of Shibby that I'm in this race. I was at Shibby's event in May. It was right before Memorial Weekend, and wasn't it Andrew Wilson? Is that his name? Mm-hmm. Was at your event, and he had moved here from California, and he was just schmoozing and rubbing elbows, and he was like, so what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a professor and spoken word artist. He was like, oh, you should run for school board. The training is next week. And I'm like, the what? And I was like, sure, let's do it. Because like Shibby said, my whole last 20 years plus have been in education. I came up in the public school system of Detroit, which I'm sure is just as interesting and dynamic as the Atlanta public school system. My mother is an educator. My son's grandmother was in education for 20-something years. So I appreciate you, Shibby, for inviting me out, which caused this chain reaction. And I'm really excited about it. I really think for the both of us, first of all, congratulations in advance. I really think that you're going to win your post. I mean, you are everywhere, speaking everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. It's just amazing. And as far as politics go, I have a little political background. When I was in Norfolk, Virginia, I actually was part of Mothers Against the War, Fair Trade, and an LGBT president of our Norfolk chapter. So I am not a stranger to grassroots politics at all, especially in spoken word. Our whole challenge and charge has been to be the voice for the voiceless. And I don't host at the Django's anymore, but I have been at Apache for 14 years, and I'm still there every fourth Sunday. So you're still welcome to come get your freestyle on, Shibby.
I love it. That's going to get us right into our conversation. Of course, we have had administrators on, parents. We have had the Atlanta student leaders talking about the importance of back to school and what it actually looks like. And so we have heard from every intricate stakeholder in the game except for teachers and educators. So we want to kick it off with you guys to give us your experiences around back to school this year. Of course, most of us are in classrooms that are now back to face-to-face learning. And so, of course, as a special education teacher who has had a student who passed away during the pandemic, it is challenging. And so I want to give space to you all to really speak to what you're seeing in schools and really helping to educate the people about what needs to, as the comment says, needs to be aired out, so that we really hear the perspective of teacher and educators. Of course, here in the city of Atlanta, we are already seeing numbers of teachers resign because of increasing numbers of COVID-19. Now, of course, I'm not naming any schools, whether they are traditional or non-traditional schools, but that is a reality for a lot of our schools. And I've had loved ones who have been impacted by COVID-19 because they've been exposed to it because of the lack of support around that in our schools. So Shibby, Queen, Brother Brown, please feel free to drop your knowledge of the teacher experience, the educator experience in regards to being in face-to-face learning atmospheres, and what are some of the pros and what are some of the cons?
Well, Clark Atlanta has given us an option to teach in the classroom or Zoom for the first 2 weeks. And they extended that to after the holiday. We can go on in class. We can be in class if we would like. The students are mandated to wear masks. I wear a mask on campus and while walking in large groups and gatherings. One of my educator friends, Brian Voice Thomas, passed away last week. We are not absolutely sure if it's of COVID or not. He did not work at Clark. I wanted to make that disconnection, but he is an educator. And it's just been a dynamic situation. I know that the campuses want to be open, especially the sophomores who are coming back who were on Zoom last year. They want that HBCU experience. They want that college experience. They want homecoming. They want the football games. They want education in the classrooms. But it's very scary. I think that especially the adjuncts and full-time professors are tiptoeing around getting back into a classroom. They're not absolutely sure yet, but our administration is being very supportive. So I definitely want to give credence to that. So it's been a little of both. It's been everybody's excited to come back, but it's also a little scary. And then we're also taking precautions, and the administration is being supportive. But I've also already seen fatalities due to.
On camp, like from students or like professors, or
say that again.
When you say fatalities, are you talking about like students passing from COVID, or are you talking about the professors, or both, or just?
Well, not professors.
Okay.
There is a student in my classroom who is she's a local, so she comes and goes from her home, and she said that people in her house have gotten COVID. So it's like, it's hard to track. Yeah, it's hard to track. Like, where did that come from? Did they give it to her? Or did she give it to them? And then she said that her aunt had passed away a couple weeks ago, like right when school started. So it's very tough. You don't want to put stigma on anything.
That's good. So. I appreciate you sharing that as well. Shibby, you are in a high school, brother. What has your experience been before we jump to Mr. Brown?
Man, I was hoping you would call me last. This, to put it plain, I feel as if we are playing Russian roulette with educators' lives. On the wall of my classroom, I take every release that our front office has put out to the kids throughout the school, stating that someone in the school, student, teacher, or otherwise, had a positive COVID case. It's like the notification letter, right? And I've taped every single one that we've had on the wall. And we've been in school 4 weeks now. And these papers go from the ceiling to the floor already. And the worst part about it is each of those releases does not represent just one person, because one of those papers could represent 5 people who contracted, or 6 people who contracted, or 2 people who contracted. And I recall how last year in March, April, May, June, if something like that were to occur, it would be a quick call to shut it down. But I believe we have normalized exposure to COVID. I think we are taking for granted the impact that it has on people. And let's be honest, right? So like, I want to give context to this COVID conversation. And I know, and I want to be very intentional and comprehensive about how I discuss this, because I know I personally have a political candidate who wants to use my pushing back on making sure we had safe school reopening last year as some form of a political football, because that's what people like to do. They like to play kids' lives. So before they get too happy and think they get some bit that they can screen record and use, let's paint a picture. Over the course of our pandemic, we've lost almost 600,000 lives. 600,000 lives. Now, if we look at the wartime history of America, we would know that one of the bloodiest wartime eras that we've ever had was during the Civil War,
right?
Which lasted about 4 years, right? 600,000 people died in 4 years of Civil War. So within the last calendar year, we've lost as many American souls to COVID as we did during 4 years of Civil War. So before people try to say, oh, well, you know, we lose more people to flu, or we lose more people to car crashes, or we lose more people to this, or these deaths are avoidable.
Yeah.
They are avoidable. And last school year, we didn't have vaccination options and the like, right? We didn't have those options. But now, if we look back at what we talked about when it came to reopening schools, we said, oh, we will decrease classroom sizes. We will social distance in the schools, right? And they go in all the schools. If you walk the hallways, you'll see the dots 6 foot apart, as if kids are going to walk as if they're on a conveyor belt, right? But in reality, they've done nothing to reduce classroom sizes. We still have classes with 30 plus kids in them, no proper ventilation, right? Our students, our teachers are not equipped with proper masks. We give out surgical masks, but those masks are only good to stop a person from spreading. It does nothing to really filtrate the air that we need, or doesn't do enough, I should say. And so I always said, if we want to safely reopen, if we want to be serious about it, we would do 2 things. Number one, every student, every teacher will be tested weekly, at least every Wednesday. Every Wednesday. And also, we would issue new N95 level mask to every student and every teacher. In fact, studies show, they say, if every American actually wore the proper mask, N95 mask, was filtrate the air, we would actually almost eliminate this pandemic in 3 weeks. So the question is, do we really want to be serious about it, or have we normalized allowing teachers and students and our families to be exposed to a deadly pandemic?
Dang, bro.
Yeah,
I got chills.
It was so
that's real.
Powerfully stated, brother.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to gather myself, because losing a student is difficult, right?
Yeah.
And having to lose a student during the pandemic is a wake-up call. And there is a lack of resources. I have a colleague right now who has reached out to me and said, Jason, we're getting concerns from grandparents. They're saying that you told us to reach out and, you know, get resources, and grandparents are concerned about sending their children back to schools in the city of Atlanta, and the schools don't even have the resources to supply masks. And a couple of schools, and I know one teacher has been on Atlanta and already has listed some of the schools that are struggling with the lack of resources for masks. And I have someone that is a former parent who is going around schools in the city of Atlanta right now, delivering boxes of masks for the school to make sure that our teachers, our staff members, and our students are protected. And so it's a good segue to go to Brother Brown, who of course is. Go ahead, Brother Me.
Yeah, I got a question for the teachers. So we know that students, for the most part, are probably wearing their masks in their classrooms, right? Now, what about the lunchroom? Like, we know the lunch. Are they going outside to eat? And, you know, like, I'm just trying outside. I'm trying to figure this out.
I'm gonna let Shibby answer first.
You know, it's so funny. Can I say this? Real quick. You know what's so funny is that, and this is not mine, and I want to repeat this 3 times. This is not mine. This is not mine. This is not mine. I saw a comedian who said, "This is not mine. Please, y'all. This is not my joke." Because I don't want anybody being like, "Sheba stole a joke." This is not my joke. But I saw a comedian who said, "You know, it's interesting that we think that COVID is going to be polite enough to wait while we eat."
Come on now.
I was like, so true, because we're on the airplane, lunch line, school. When we're having meals with our friends and family, we're like, oh, we could take our masks off.
I mean, the airplane is probably safer if you think about it, because I mean, if you have your nose exposed on the plane, like the stewardess are coming after you, but I'm talking about the lunchroom. If the classroom's already like 30, 40 deep, first, second lunch hour going to be, jam-packed. So I'm trying to hear from, a first-hand experience, like what does the cafeteria look like and what's happening there?
It looked like it did 2 years ago.
Yeah, that
it looks like it did 2 years ago. Folks are still young people are in there obviously eating just like we do in a restaurant or otherwise, right? But the difference is that lunch is a even more social time. And if you're a high school teacher, first off, our lunches are trash, right? The lunches are horrible. Kids hate them. They don't really eat them. And so you got kids that sell snacks and things like that to hustle and make their own money. So kids are moving around to try to support other young people who are selling their snacks and those type of things, right? We're not even talking about the buses. We ain't even talking about the fact that these kids are, and mind you, there's a bus driver shortage. Yes. So I'm talking about kids are riding on buses without seats. They're standing on buses.
Whoa. Yeah. For real.
They are standing on buses. In real life.
Wow.
Or they're eating in their classrooms with 30 and 40 kids. And it's like, this is our free time. This is our moment to be free. And you guys have to picture this. If you're in a building, it could be a new building, but what if the windows won't open? Because there is also a shortage of maintenance workers. There's a shortage of nurses. There's a shortage of counselors. So now we don't have the support staff to really support reopening schools for face-to-face learning. And we're jam-packed because we're trying to be safe. So we're jam-packed in classrooms instead of going to the cafeteria, but you still have 30 people in a small room trying to eat, and God forbid somebody coughs or sneezes while they have their mask down trying to eat.
Can we talk about the joke of contact tracing?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Right. The joke of contact tracing. And that's
what I was saying earlier about the student and her aunt passing away and coming and going from school. They wanted her to do contact tracing, and it's like, where do you even start? And just because you have on a mask doesn't mean that you're not going to touch a piece of material, a pole, an elevator button, a keypad at Kroger or at those filthy gas stations. Just because you have on a mask, just like Shibby said, it doesn't mean that you're not going to contract COVID from another source.
Or spread it.
Yeah. I want to give space to Chantel because we've been going ahead.
To find out.
I was trying to get him in. I was trying to get you in, brother. I did not forget
what's going on down there.
I'm definitely enjoying the conversation.
Why is
Feeling
Wednesday? Why was Wednesday significant for you to have testing on Wednesday?
I'll answer that real quick and then move out of Centel's way. But if you test on Wednesday, it takes 24 to 48 hours to get the results, right? So if you test on Wednesday, they get those results back on either a Friday or a Saturday, and that kind of lessens the amount of time that they would be out, because they would then be sitting out on a weekend.
That's good.
And so that is my thought process
smart.
on why Wednesday makes sense as a testing day.
Smart.
And actually, it's a practice that's used in some places like Ron Clark Academy. They test on Wednesday. And it was just my thought. And then it was affirmed by someone who I know, a school that I know does it. And they test all their kids weekly and teachers.
What school district
Well,
is
in the
that?
spring semester, when I went back, the students had to get tested twice a week. They were tested on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Wow.
Twice a week.
Right, but
And
we have limitations on the resources to do it, whether it be personnel or otherwise. They're going to first off say they can't afford to do it anyway, right? Like out the gate, let alone do it 2 times.
So the kids' lives aren't like important enough to test them multiple times.
Like if it, come on, like yeah, okay.
Yeah, you make your point about normalizing, contracting the virus. All right, Mr. Brown, what's going on down there in Griffin?
Well, in Griffin Spalding, we are doing everything that we can do to keep our scholars safe. To Jason's point and to Shibby's point, you're right. There are a shortage of custodial staff, a shortage of nutrition staff, and a shortage of bus drivers. Recently in Griffin Spalding, we've had 2 bus drivers to die from COVID. And it is a very hard thing to even just understand, because when you think about bus drivers, if they are not on the roads, they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
So even if we decide to shut down, if we can, I mean, right now everything's under, as far as an entire school district is underneath of 20%. So if it raises to that and we decide that we close down schools, so then what does it mean for the nutrition worker? What does it mean for the custodial worker or even for the bus driver? Yes, now we have, when the pandemic first started, we were able to cross-train bus drivers to go do custodial work or nutrition workers to do other work. But, now with, we have the hang of virtual, most people have the hang of virtual learning since we've already done it before. And, have the different platforms. Like before, most school districts probably didn't have a platform where they could do virtual learning, right? But now, getting into this, school districts have purchased platforms where they can do virtual learning. And so we're just trying to do everything we can to keep our scholars safe. I want to laugh about the contract tracing, which is, it's like, where do you start? Where do you start in knowing, like, so I was just around this person, or if the conversation or the interaction was less than 7 minutes, or, all that, it is a joke. But what I can say is that we are making sure that our employees, especially central office staff in our schools, that they do their own health check screenings, where you can go and you scan the app and you pull it up and you do it. It goes to the nursing professional in the event that, and let me get this straight too. A lot of times teachers may be calling out, but they have not gone to get the test. So how can we include that in our COVID numbers? So if there are any teachers that are watching, I want to employ you and ask you to please go get tested. Go get tested so that we keep talking about, well, why haven't we closed down yet? Well, number one, if you're not reporting the numbers. Number two, if you're not getting tested and not reporting it, how are we able to factor that in? When we have that information, we're able to, for example, one of the entire 6th grade at one of my schools, they closed down the entire 6th grade. But if you have an entire 6th grade that's been closed down, but yet you have a sibling in 7th grade, then that scholar too should be quarantining and go get tested. And so in Spalding County, we're just trying to do everything that we can do. We do have, we will have testing sites coming up after the break, so that after the holidays, so that you can get tested as much as you want to, so that we can make sure that families are safe, scholars are safe, teachers are safe, employees are safe when they come to work. So we're doing everything that we can do. And as an advocate for teachers and an advocate for scholars, I mean, I just want to make sure that if there are things that are going on in schools, like I had teachers that reached out to me and said, hey, how do they expect us to do this when we have this? If I don't know, or your governance team does not know, then it can't be fixed. So continue to either bring solutions, let the governance team members, the superintendent and cabinet members know, so that together we can collectively work together to get these things solved and make it to where it's the best health condition and situation for people that are interacting with our scholars and doing the work every day.
I want to just ask Centel, just from educator to school board representative. I have two big issues, especially in the line of like technology, right? I will say finally many school districts are kind of like catching up, right? Like I know in Clayton, we were not one-to-one, right? And for those who are not in education, that means that every student has their own personal computer to access, schoolwork and the internet and the like. We didn't have that until the pandemic, right? Like we waited to get right. We waited to come to the 21st century.
We definitely were sending laptops home to students during the pandemic.
Huge issue. And then there was a shortage because everyone was doing it who hadn't been doing it before. But now you got teachers teaching hybrid, right? So like I teach in person, 25 kids, and then I teach online, another 25 kids, right? And so I'm essentially doing two jobs at one time, but receiving the same pay, right? No incentives, no additional compensation, no, additional planning period or something like that, right? It's like, well, teachers already been juggling it all. Here, juggle another thing. Why not? Right? What could possibly go wrong? So I take issue with that. And then the other thing is, I don't think we're being transparent or honest about why schools are open right now.
Ooh-wee.
Everybody's forgetting it all comes down to money. And a lot of the reason why schools are not closing right now is because there's additional federal funding in which they're only eligible for if there is in-person instruction.
Yeah.
And so if we don't
Spalding County, I don't think we care about that. With
well, it's not about caring. It's people care. People can't care about what they don't know about.
Well, I definitely know that Clark cares because it's a private institution, and they've been talking about how enrollment has increased. And then what happened? We had a housing crisis, right? Because now we have too many freshmen that we didn't even know how to house, and now they're in Midtown somewhere, piled on top of each other.
Wow. I think Shibby was making a great point, though, for a school board member. And I have been tuned into the Griffin-Spalding meetings, right? And so a lot of the things that they are doing is vastly different from what Clayton County is doing. My school is in Clayton County, but we were created because there was a technology divide. So we already had one-to-one where when it hit, the other schools in Clayton County were like, what's happening? What are we going to do? And so a lot of
teaching on Instagram. That was the only way I could reach my kids. We didn't have Zoom accounts.
That's right.
That's good.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
And I think Griffin-Spalding is doing a lot of things differently because we have a superintendent who is not that far removed from the classroom. Thank God we got a new superintendent. We have myself and another board member who, well, she's retired, but are educators. And so we think a lot from the teacher's perspective.
That's
right?
Good.
And then we also have, for example, the guy that I call Leader Holmes. He was our emergency management director for Spalding County. So a lot of our thinking is different, and we're forward-thinking people, and we're able to have the buy-in of our colleagues. We have another board member who serves as a vice president at one of the local colleges, and then we have another board member who's a pastor. And so being that the pastor has seen how the pandemic has affected his church, we have another board member who is in higher education. She says of effect. So we all are thinking, and it's very clear that as a governance team, our superintendent listens to the board.
That's good.
It's very clear that the superintendent listens to the board, and we all work together. It's not about ego. It's not about, you in your district, I'm in my district. We are here at this time, as much uncertainty that is happening, to ensure that all scholars are receiving what they need, that families have what they need, and teachers have what they need in order to be successful. So, who you elect certainly makes a difference. Who you elect certainly makes a difference because, when you're thinking from, it's not like school board, is not like city council, it's not like the county commission, it's not like the state senate or state. It is very, very unique, and you have to remember at the end of the day why you were there. That you were there, number one. Like when I go to schools and kids will tell you they see me at Walmart, they say because I tell them I work for you. I work for you. I am your employee. Right. And so when students call me or they come knock on my door and they say, even if they mess up my name, they call me Central, Mr. Central, it is what it is. I listen to them and I always take it back to my colleagues because at the end of the day, we have to make the best decision for the 10,000 students that are in our school district. And so I think it becomes when you elect people who are visionary, elect people who are open-minded, and elect people who are willing to work together to solve the issues. And if one thing I can say about my superintendent, my super, is he says, hey guys, I don't know it all. If you have a solution to a problem, make me aware of it. And it's not an ego thing there. And so we would have not been having this conversation maybe a year ago, Jason, because we had a superintendent who was a complete asshole. And so it is what it is. He's no longer there. And we are so, doing your church shouting dance, whatever it can, we're happy to have him out of the way. And now we have someone. It makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. We have someone who really cares about the work that he does. So we have someone that cares about making sure and listens. And it goes back down to listening to the board. We see in too many instances where superintendents get way too comfortable. They get way too comfortable. Sure. And they begin to think that they tell the board members what to do. And I think once you have that understanding, especially for those that are running for school board, you get that understanding that it's a governance mindset. There's so much that you can do to change the world. There's so much that you can do to make the mitigation strategies, to make everything that comes under the scope of the governance team to just make it better for people. And so that's what we're doing in Griffin's Body. Yes, we have those challenges, but one thing I can say, we all get together, we all make sure that we are doing what's necessary for the greater good of our constituency.
Love that, brother. Leo, go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So I have a question. You're a school board member. Do you know the rate of or how many students in your school district actually have COVID right now, or are y'all doing weekly testing, or like what's going on there? Because I kind of heard something about it, but I didn't quite get that.
Absolutely. Let me get that number for you right now.
That's
with
good,
our dashboard.
That you have that access, just like that, because we
before coming on,
we just asked this question in the city of Atlanta, and
yes,
it's like you're asking someone for $1 million. But baby, we're not asking for $1 million. We're just asking you what you should know as a board member, and it goes back to asking the right questions. So, Nia, I'm glad that you asked that, and brother, I'm glad that you're prepared.
Oh, absolutely. We have a really good communications director, and he updates the board members. We have our one-on-one, not only with the superintendent, but with communications, because these are not, like, when you think about District 1, you're thinking about the Black and brown kids that I serve. And so I want to know. Yeah. If it's anything dealing with District 1, you best believe I want to know. So right now, Jason, to answer the question, out of our 10,000 students that we have 95 students who are currently tested positive. 95 students that have tested positive. We then have 505 students who are quarantined now due to close contact. And so, like I said, it's not at that 20% to where we would close down the entire school district.
How many students do you have in your school district?
We have 10,000 students.
Y'all are doing pretty good then.
Right. And at first there was the first week of school we said that masks were optional.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Because I happen to be a bit of a numbers genius. So that 95, I said I happen to be a bit of a numbers genius. I said, so that 95 is also in that 500 though.
No, it's not.
Well, it should be.
Okay.
Because you're saying 95 kids have COVID. and 505
current positive test. Listen to what I said. Current positive test. That 95 is not in that 505.
So are they being quarantined?
So the 95 that have the positive tests are quarantined, correct?
No,
right. So are
students
are the 95 quarantined?
Listen to me. Current students who have tested positive, had a test, and they've tested positive, 95. That is not including the number of students who are out on quarantine due to close contact. Totally different numbers.
Got it. So,
Queen,
so then, I guess to your question, if you add both together, that'll give you the total number of students who have been exposed and or tested positive.
Right. So if you change the wording and say exposed, then yes, you would add the 95 and the 505. Correct.
So gotcha. are the 95 mandated to quarantine?
And they have to get a negative test before they return back to our building.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
So are they learning remotely at this point? Like when they're at home, like what's that about?
Yes, and we have an amazing sitting thinking through everything and how that we're going to move to our virtual school. So they have been moved to the platform to be virtual. Once their time is up from quarantine, they will come back into the schools, and then other students will move to virtual. Yes, we do have teachers that are simultaneously teaching online and teaching in person, but for the most part, everyone is banding together. They may hate to do it, but they're banding together because until we come up with another solution, it has to be done. And I am not of the belief that just because you're upset that it's going to make us better not serve our scholars. You want to get me upset, let's not serve our scholars. So the scholar has nothing to do with the situation and like with me too. Although I'm in a different situation because my principal allowed me to be virtual. So you must be willing to serve our scholars regardless of what's happening, what administration is saying, what the Board of Education is doing. Yes, we understand. That's why with our employee assistance program, we're making sure that our teachers are going and getting professional help if they need it. We have a therapist that is from Griffin that has therapy boxes available that we are willing to purchase for our staff to feel safe. Because like I said, uncertain times where everybody, and Griffin is a smaller district, so we may be able to do these things because we are a smaller district. But bottom line is we care about what's going on, and you have a governance team that really cares about what's happening, and we want to do what's in the best interest of our scholars. Always number one.
I have one more question, and I know that time is of the essence. Go ahead. You're the guest.
So Shibby, you know what we should do since we're in Atlanta proper? I was just inspired by the thought of why don't we create a cyber learning system and hire cyber teachers that are specifically tasked with teaching the students that are out on COVID instead of giving the teachers that are in the classroom a dual task. That would, one, employ those people, the teachers that wanted to quit because they didn't want to be in the classroom, they could teach safely
or resign.
Yeah. Or resign.
I love that. And Queen, I would say this. It's Christina Guillen.
Let's make that program.
Well, and I think another thing that let me add this too. So for those scholars or those families who were uncomfortable with their scholars returning back to school, so they're in a totally different virtual learning program that is being taught by teachers that are designated just for them. They're not teaching in person; they're teaching just online to them.
That's wonderful.
Now the problem comes in, which we have not been able to come up. Well, we're still talking through trying to get a solution. But so let's say if Jason's son is in Griffin-Spalding County School System, but Jason as a parent decided that the scholar should attend in person. If he goes out in quarantine or if he gets COVID, and he goes out, the teacher is then his teacher record is then teaching both virtual and in person. So we're trying to come up with a way to do that to make that better. But if you opted to just be a virtual student, we have teachers designated just for virtual learning.
That's good. I was going to add to the point that Centel just made is that Christina Guillen, who is my school leader in Clayton County, we actually offer all models. So we have students, again, learning from what happened at the onset of the pandemic, who have severe health conditions. And so they have the option to learn virtually. And we have a team of teachers who only teach virtually. Then we have teachers who, some of them like to do hybrid. It's like, listen, on the off days, I'm at home, I get to teach virtually with my students. And then I'm in the building teaching. And then we have some students who are in the building every day who are learning, because the classrooms are now smaller and we're able to accommodate that. But that goes with innovation and careful thinking, and making sure that we are giving teachers who are in these classrooms, working with our students, the flexibility and autonomy to be able to do so. And a lot of our school systems, especially Atlanta, Clayton still has some growth. I'm hoping that they're getting there probably a little sooner than Atlanta, but we should be offering these models in every school setting so that it's not a fear of teachers of not wanting to show up for work, having to resign. And then the point that Centel made earlier around bus drivers. You know, one of the things that we do in our bus system is that those students who are learning virtual, we know that they may not have food. So the cafeteria workers still have to show up, because they're making lunches for those students who are learning virtually in hybrid settings. And those bus drivers are still able to go around, and they're doing community drop-offs. We have built volunteers to come and make sure that the food is picked up, and they walk it to every child's house. But that takes collaboration of the school board, making sure that policies are set so that the funding is available, and the superintendent, who leads the work of operations and making sure these things are being accurately implemented day to day, can actually do these things. But when you have school boards that don't have the expertise at the table, and you have superintendents that have to serve in a dual role, and unfortunately we see that that does not work all the time. We should have board members that are thought partners with superintendents, and not superintendents who are really suffering to get the support that they need. So I wanted to add that part to the conversation too.
And I also want to say, Jason, for those students that are virtual learners, we have it to where there are 5 different locations where they can come and pick up food which will last them for the week. And so we want to make sure that even though they're virtual, that our scholars are still getting fed as well. So, you know, that's one of the things, you know, making sure that our scholars are eating. Because like I shared with you guys a while back, that was a conversation because of our old superintendent, who was like, well, we don't feed kids on spring break. Okay. And they're not in the middle of a pandemic either. So, you know, that's just one of the things that we're doing to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our scholars, whether they're virtual or in person.
So, awesome. Centel, one of the things what you brought
wrap up, brothers and sisters, with our last words. So Shibby, we'll actually kick it off with you. So you can go ahead, give us your last words. We've been in for our hour, but we don't want to leave without getting last words from these amazing guests, and any tips, strategies, information. I see some of the signs in the background, so I definitely want to give you guys a couple of minutes to give last words before we head off the air.
What I think we still kind of is being glossed over was my point as to why schools are remaining in person, and how it's tied with funding, and how there's been a mandate for in-person instruction. And I think so long as we continue to gloss over that part, that we are not giving full transparency and credibility to our conversation. It's not like an affront towards Centel, but I'm talking about in education in general, right? We're not really having this talk. We've received an influx of federal funding to our schools, and we've done not enough to make sure that our schools are safer spaces. See, 1 year of pandemic has allowed us to forget that right before we shut down due to this pandemic, we had kids ducking in corners and covering windows and practicing drills in the event of an active shooter. We're not talking about mass school shootings anymore. And I think it is very disheartening for me that we allow ourselves to find comfort in the benefits of a horrible time right now. We are not focused on the reality of what is going on in America, right? We have a gun violence issue in America that has to be addressed. We have a digital divide issue in America, which has to be addressed. We have a food insecurity issue. We have a housing insecurity issue. We have a social emotional deficit and lapses in access to mental health care for our young people and for our teachers. And so while we're talking about the negative impacts and all of the risk to our lives through the potential of contracting COVID, we're also forgetting about all the other things that schools are being tasked with that show where government outside of the school is not doing enough to make sure that these gaps are bridged, which is why I'm running for city council, because there's so much that happens outside of the classroom that needs to be taken care of that is not being taken care of. A child can't learn in the classroom if they're hungry. A child can't learn in the classroom if they don't have a secure place to sleep at night. A child can't learn in the classroom if they don't have access to the internet.
That's real talk.
So it's time for us to get real about what is happening and tell the truth, whether we're in position or not in position, whether we're seeking position or looking to maintain position. We got to start telling the truth about why things are happening the way that they are. Kids would not be back in the building if they didn't mandate additional CARES funding being tied to in-person instruction. It wouldn't be happening right now. And we're not doing what we should be doing to safeguard our classrooms for beyond this pandemic the way that we should be. Because a mass shooting is one news cycle away.
That's it.
That's good, brother. I think we lended our minutes. We lended our minutes to Brother Shibby, but he preached, and those are very important points. And I really hope that people take that away, that the pre-existing issues that I called it a lot on Atlanta are still there, and they have to also be addressed. Queen, we'll go to you very quickly, then Brother Brown, as we prepare to close out.
Big ups to Shibby for his powerful words. And I do live on the west side, west end of Atlanta, and one of my main platform points is talking about safety in schools, and ironically, mental health and proper food, and of course, equity in education, because we have the lowest funding in the entire school district. So I won't take up too much of your time, but those are just some of the things that I stand on for my candidacy. And you can learn more about me and what I stand for at queensheba4atlanta.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sister, for sharing that. Brother Brown?
Thank you, Jason. It is always a pleasure to be on this platform and talk that real stuff. To the guest panelists today, thank you so much for your words, and definitely having some type of virtual academy, having that is progressive and that is innovative, really will help. Some type of pod really will help many communities, especially those that cannot afford to have and pay for maybe retired teachers. So it's definitely a way, something that we all can think about and come together and put our thoughts together to find the best solution. It is amazing how things will change. I remember first coming on the show and being really angry about reopening and all these things, because, like I said, that I don't care about what the state says as it relates to funding and all that. We want to make sure that our kids are safe, our scholars are safe. We want to make sure that our teachers are safe. And so at the end of the day, for me, it's always about doing the right thing. And yes, we all enjoy teaching. We all enjoy being in the classroom and being in our element. But what good is that if we're not safe and we feel scared to come to work, or not wanting to be in PD or in meetings, because you never know. What if your colleague is not vaccinated? What if your colleague is not reporting that they have COVID or not? And so it is my prayer that as we continue to move forward through this, that school districts will do what's in the best interest of their kids, not about self. I take the saying "non si bis et alis" as it relates to the founding of Georgia, not for self but for others, and I take that same outlook in my life of service and education. And so We're praying for everybody. Pray for Griffin Spalding. We'll be praying for you guys as well. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you today.
This has been amazing. Brother Neil, you have last words for us?
I mean, we are negative time at this point, so I'm just going to go ahead and thank the guest, Alfred Shibby Brooks. Thank you so much for coming on. Miss Queen Sheba, Mr. Centel Brown, thank you for coming on TDRS and sharing your wisdom today.
Yes, we really appreciate you guys. Please make sure that you like and share this conversation. And we look forward to it. Again, this has been another episode of TDRS. Thank you guys for being on. Check out the Alpha School Board page. I always do that at the end because I like to keep my daytime work separate from what I'm doing with my campaign to run for school board in the city of Atlanta. But like these like-minded individuals, we definitely need change. And I'm excited to see so many people in the Metro Atlanta area running for office to do that for our children and families. So kudos to everyone. Brother Brown, thank you for the work that you're doing already as a board member, as a teacher. I think that answers my question. Should we have an educator's voice on the school board? And I think that brother is representing that well. So we also need educators in other spaces, from the mayor's office, the city council, maybe on DA, because maybe we would do better about not arresting youth and really giving them some other outcomes. I won't even start preaching on that. I'll end us with this. Let's make sure we're doing our part to make sure that everyone is educated, everyone is getting the support that they need. Thank you to our background workers leading this show and helping us stay on. But we are over our time, and we are going to go until next Friday, 12 noon. Check out another episode of TDRS, and please make sure you go and follow all of our guests and the amazing work that they're doing. Of course, subscribe to atlanta.org and the Black Wall Street Times. Peace and love, everybody. Until next week.